Here we are with a very special episode. We're joined by Simon Racioppa. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Happy to be here. Glad to be chatting with you guys about this.
Awesome. I'm first off, congrats so much on the success of season 1 and the so far success of season 2. As we're recording this, episode 3 hasn't been released yet, but we are going to release this after the fact, so we can talk a little bit about episodes 1 through 4. So yeah, we just haven't got a chance to say in person like this. Congrats on, that was pretty amazing what happened with season 1 and being such huge fans of the comic and seeing this adaptation kind of like rise in popularity and be something that is so well adapted, has been really great. And I hope you've enjoyed this as well, as much as we've been enjoyed watching it.
Thanks. That's really kind of you guys to say. I'd be amiss. I want to make it super clear. Like, obviously, we're chatting today, but there's like 200 other people who work on the show.
Oh, yeah.
All of whom contribute in immensely important, crucial, amazing ways. So the credit has to be spread, nicely across all 200 of us or so. I want to make sure that we don't forget, everybody else who works on the show. But no, I think, I thought we would have a core audience, obviously, just because the comic is great and popular, and I knew that, and everything Robert touches turns to gold. But I was surprised by how much of an audience we got for season 1. So that was a wonderful surprise. And in this business, you never know, right? So there's great shows that don't find an audience, even though they should, and disappear after season. And there's shows that maybe you personally think you're like, I don't know why people watch this, but have a massive audience and go on forever. Yeah. So you can't expect anything. So having a great response is wonderful, and I'm super thankful for it every single day.
Yeah. And like you were saying, with it being such a team effort, one thing that we've discovered when doing this podcast, and especially in the beginning, was learning a lot more about how comics are made and how a monthly comic book comes out. And we didn't really know the inner workings and ins and outs of all that kind of stuff. And since the show has been coming out, we've been learning a whole lot more about animation, things that we had no idea about. And we were lucky enough to have a director on from season 1 and a storyboard artist from season 1. And just learning more about it has been incredible. So can you tell us just a little bit more about what it means to be a showrunner and what you're actually doing in terms of adapting this?
Sure. I mean, like, Robert and I are co-showrunning the series together. We kind of split things up, to make it a little more manageable, especially because obviously, I think you guys know, it's not a secret, we're doing 2 and 3 at the same time. So that's just like a huge amount of work.
Yeah.
So the showrunner position is generally a writer position in 99% of television. I think there's some rare exceptions, but it's the person who's sort of the person or persons who are in charge of basically the creative vision for the show, and sort of maintaining that across every aspect of the show, from the initial scripts, or breaking the story, breaking the season, to designs, to costumes, in the case of casting, music, editing, post, helping choose your keys. For the keys would be like, your supervising director, or your directors of episodes, or your sound team, or your composer, and just sort of like the person who can step back and see the entire picture.
Wow.
And knows what's coming up too, and so has sort of but also lets the people let the people you hire do their jobs too.
Yeah.
And just sort of like oversee everything. So in a film, that's a director who looks over the film, but in television is usually a writer, because the writer's also working on the next couple episodes, where the director might only be doing that episode or a couple episodes in isolation. So that's kind of the role, the showrunner role, the EP role on not just an animated series, but sort of like any television series.
It doesn't seem so stressful.
So it's easy. It's a lot of sleeping.
Yeah, you get a ton of sleep, at least 8 hours a night.
To wake up, look at the script, be like, that's pretty good.
Yeah. With you having other writers, and honestly, I just imagine that you're just every day just surrounded by so many people that love Invincible, that are just pitching you ideas for the direction of the show. How are you able to kind of wean through all of those ideas, take some of them out, but still stay in line with the direction that you and Robert have for the show?
So we run it a little differently than that. So that's what you're talking about is kind of more like how a lot of shows run, which is where they don't have they don't have a book, or they're not adapting something, right? Like you're just coming in like in a show, you know, like Severance or something like that. You know, they had a creative vision for the show, but then you're working the story out in the room, and maybe you don't know what the next episode is, or what elements even you want to have in the rest of the season. You're working that out with the writers you hire, and it's this can be a very collaborative process, you know. Sometimes the creator might have like really key ideas, and then you're working with those. On Invincible, you know, we have these, right? We have like all of these. So that's where we start. So you're not really coming in pitching a whole episode to us. What we're kind of looking at is like, okay, how can we take what's in the books? How can we adapt that to television in an interesting, compelling, emotional way? And where are there places where maybe we want to open things up a little bit more and sort of like go a little deeper into a storyline? You know, certain things work great on the page, but they don't necessarily translate perfectly to television. So maybe we have to change them. How can we change them? So it's less about what new ideas are we bringing to the show, more about like how are we taking what's already there, going deeper and adapting it properly to television. And then so that's what the writing team helps us do. And then also in their episode, you know, it's like, okay, we want to show Debbie going through, you know, an emotional collapse. The book maybe only has a couple panels of that. We're going to need way more than that for the show. We're going to go deeper into that. What is that? What does that look like? What literally happens on screen? Because it's one thing to say like she breaks down. Great. Well, how? Where is it? In the kitchen? In her bedroom? Outside on the lawn? How do we portray that? You know, does she break something? Does she just sort of like cry into her hands? Like, there's a million different ways. So that's what the writing team brings to the show. Is like trying to find out those specifics and figure out like what's the best way to communicate the emotion of the scene to an audience that we can also produce in our time schedule and on our budget.
I think one of the best examples of you kind of explaining that whole like how you guys work it out is the last episode that just came out. Well, I don't know when this is releasing, Ryan.
We're releasing after the 4 episodes.
Okay,
so
but
everybody has seen all 4 episodes.
In episode 2, where it's literally a joke, this issue that came out in Atlantis, and there are things that happen in it that are like that resonate, no pun intended. That like it's really surprising, like that you guys were able to take such a simple, funny joke and turn it into something that like mattered and will matter and continue to matter. It's just
Well, I think, I mean, that's the team, you know, it's us sort of sitting down. I mean, look, Robert, the books are great. Obviously, you guys know that you love the books, but there are places where like, maybe we could connect this a bit more. Maybe we could, you know, wire this into the story, make it matter a bit more. There's this big thing in television, you know, where people are just like, you know, like we have around 45 minutes per episode. We could sometimes go a little longer, sometimes go a little less, but you have to kind of make it all count. Right? We can't just do another episode if we didn't get to where we needed to get to. We have, you know, 8 episodes per season, and we know kind of where we want to end and we know where we want to start. And we have things we have to show you along the way. So if we have a scene, sometimes we do just have big goofy scenes, but other scenes are like, this has to carry water for us. This has to move us along in some way, hopefully an emotional way. So how can we tie it in a bit more if we want to keep it? And if it's just doing nothing for us and it's just a funny beat, maybe we can have that, but also those are the things that get cut first for something more important. Wow. So it's kind of that back and forth.
I mean, a massive example of that was the huge change you guys took in season 1, end of episode 1. I mean, throughout that entire first season, there's this, you know, looming mystery of what's going on with Omni-Man. Not in the comic at all, but you guys found a way to weave that into every part of the story. That is affecting Mark. That is hugely affecting Debbie. You know, what's going on with Cecil, like, you know, Damien Darkblood, like, but you still told so much of the story from season 1 in season 1, but you had this massive change going on as well. And that was all different writers, you know, handling each of those, but it's all still feels like the same continuity. You know, it's not jumbled. It's not like you know, back in the early 2000s or something where it's like, you know, every episode, you might not get, you know, the main story beats in this one or filler episodes or anything.
Yeah, and to be clear, that is how most serialized shows are done nowadays. It's not like when we say different writers are writing them, it's not like they're writing them in isolation. You know, like the season begins when Robert and I get together and we sit down, certainly season 1, and we just go through the books and we're like, let's talk about the season. What do we want to have in the season? Where do we think it starts and where do we think it stops? Here are some key elements. Maybe we could pull this forwards and stick in there. And we build a rough break of the season. And then we sit down with the writers, and we're all in the same room together, and we do a finer break of the season. So everybody knows what's happening in the episode before them and what's happening in the episode after them, and literally what's happening in every episode of the season to a wide degree. And then they go off and write their episodes. So there's no isolation. And then while they're doing their drafts, we're also working, like Robert and I, working on the other drafts with the other writers. So there's this communication going back and forth where we're like, actually, you know what, that scene you had with Debbie, I think it would be better if we gave it to the episode before yours. So we're going to pull it out of yours. Thanks for writing it. And we'll give it to this writer and it goes into theirs, and well, that has happened. And then yours, though, now we can spend a little bit more time in this scene. So those pages you thought you didn't have, now you've got 3 more pages. Let's go further. So everybody is talking to everybody the whole time. And that's part of my job, is really to coordinate all that and to make sure that everyone's aware and to sort of, again, step back and look at the whole picture and be like, everything connects, and then we do usually, myself, Helen Lay's co-producer on the show, we do a read-through every season with Ross Strachey, who's one of our writers, later in the process, and just make sure all our threads linked all the way through. Or if we've forgotten something, it's a character not reacting to something that they probably should react to. Yeah, we miss stuff, but we try to make it all sync up as best as we can. Yeah.
Yeah, and talking about, how many moving parts it seems like you're managing as well, knowing that you guys are working on season 2 and 3 at the same time, that has to, I'm sure, complicate things even more so than I would assume on most shows. It is, you have one season, you're making this season and, hoping to get the green light. How has that sort of changed the way you guys have to approach kind of working on the show?
I mean, it's where it's having key sort of great people in great positions makes the difference. So we have Dan Duncan, who's our supervising director, who I just know he's going to handle things and he's going to do a great job and he's going to fix stuff. So I can be sort of just like watch cuts, make suggestions on edits and things like this, but I know he's got it. He's got that. We got Sean O'Neill, our art direction. Corey Walker, obviously, you guys know, is overseeing a lot of the art. So that's stuff where it's like, I know I don't have to worry about it. I check in and I see all the designs, but like Corey's a better artist than I will ever be. I'm not an artist. I can't draw. So if Corey says it's good and it's thumbs up, then I know it's good. It's fine. I'll step in if I'm just like, actually, you know what, though, we're going to need a redesign of that because in 2 episodes, that character gets a wound or something changes. That's where I can sort of help. But I'm not going to tell Corey how to draw his own characters. Like, he knows what he's doing. He's great. So that's what makes this possible. It's a really good team, all working at the highest level, who can handle all these different aspects, where Robert and I kind of like hover over and just kind of make sure everything's linking up, and ultimately that all the scripts are working and translating properly into the show.
Yeah. One thing that we're seeing a lot of, because episode 2 just came out, is just the sheer amount of, comic book stuff you put into this episode 2 specifically. I know 3 is a lot like that. But then you get episodes like, episode, the finale, episode 8 of last season, or episode 4 of season 2, where it's like, all right, let's distill it down. Let's make this one a little bit more personal. Let's, slow it down a bit. That just seems like, I know there's not much of a question here, but that just seems like a lot of fun, being able to go through the books and see like, okay, like, this Atlantis stuff is going on, or this, Lizard League stuff is going on. Or we can also introduce Shapesmith. I mean, is it just a dry erase board, or is it how do you get to the point where it's like, you can pull so many different things, and is it ever like, oh, maybe this is too much?
I mean, it's you're basically, that's how we do it. I mean, it's a pretty organic process. We really sit down. There's things, so like, a good example in season 1, like the Titan storyline. Titan in the books, I think, is like a couple pages, maybe that, but it's pretty small. Yeah. Still a great character, great story, but I remember reading that and being like, I think we could make a lot more out of this. Let's go a little deeper into his character. So that's the case where we took, a small amount of the book and we pulled it open, and we sort of found all these extra panels in between the panels that we could turn into a show.
And that song too. Whew.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm really happy with how that came out, and I feel like it's something we were able to add to the show, to the Invincible universe, that sort of like worked really well. And you're going to see some of that going forwards, and then you're going to see stuff that is really almost identical to what's in the books. Because what's in the books is great, and we look at it and we're like, that's perfect. We don't need to add to that. We maybe have to spell some things out, because again, panels that can only show you so much. So we're like, okay, we're going to need another scene here. We're going to need this, but let's just do this. So I feel the show is always a pull back and forth between those two things.
I mean, it's even more credit to, I mean, we're diehard Invincible fans, so this is just going to be a lot of us just gushing over your work and your team's work. But you had your ability to even do the opposite of that with your team too, like kind of go in a direction where like episode 2 of season 2, like Bill talked about, where there were so many like little storylines of the comic that you guys packed into one episode, but it felt organic. It didn't feel rushed. It felt just, it was natural. And there were so many like funny moments, and you still fell in love with the characters, even though they're not on screen for like, it wasn't Shapesmith's episode. It wasn't like, you know, it was awesome. So it's cool that you can expand on characters like Titan, but still keep the heart of like the small pieces too. And it just still feel just as natural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, like, but you guys know, like, you know, Robert will introduce a character on, you know, like issue 30, and then suddenly the character will have a massive backstory run over like 3 issues or 4 issues at like issue like 86 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So we want to make sure too that we're not screwing ourselves out of telling a later story, you know, because we didn't introduce something early on. So we sort of really look at everything he did in the books and be like, oh, wait, no, we need to have this here because this is going to pay off in season 6, right? Know, if we get to a season 6, and we don't want to screw that up. We want to make sure I
almost think that's probably one of the reasons the show has seen so much success via like word of mouth among fans, because even the storylines that might feel like the B plot or might not feel like the main storyline, you have people like us going like, oh, that thing Robot just said, though, it's going to have such huge implications later on. And it creates more like interest in the storylines. Yeah, it's incredible the way you guys are weaving all this in. I know Bill mentioned, sorry, do you want to go?
No, I was just going to piggyback. I mean, you said my name, so I'll just listen to it.
Go. No, go.
No, I was just gonna say, like, even little things like how you can tell a story with the title card. Honestly, Simon, when that happened, we flipped the table. We were like, "What the fuck?" Like, it was the coolest thing that had happened that we had seen. We loved
seeing the black and blue reveal is what you're referring to, right?
Oh, okay.
Oh my god, yeah.
Little things like that, and the way you're
speaking. It comes back to that thing of, like I said, like you only have so many minutes, so you're trying to make every minute count. Every minute matter. So it's like you're like, okay, is if we have a scene, can we get it to do something for us? Can we get it to just move a character forwards, or just hint at a bit more of a character story or what they're going through, their emotions? And you should, you know, I think good screenwriting is about economy. Is it like literally you have so few pages and so few words even in those pages? You got to make everyone matter as much as you can. You can't go too far with that, obviously. Like it still has to feel natural, but that's the goal.
I have a question that I hope, maybe if it's a spoiler or if it does spoil something, what it had that we've already seen in season 1 and what we've seen in season 2, is there something that you fought for, but someone was like, well, does it carry water? Like, do we actually need it? And you were like sad that it didn't make the cut?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I mean, like, because again, you know, the writing team, we always, they treat me the same way I treat them. You know, so I expect I get my writing team to read my scripts and to give me notes back on my scripts, because there's stuff, you know, I forget or I make mistakes or stuff. You know, all my work can be better too. So it's really great to have the team also read my material and be like, you know what, we think the scene could go further, you know, or like, this doesn't make any sense. You need to cut this. So it's a real, you know, great team effort to get these scripts, you know, and Robert obviously reads everything too, and he has comments as well. But oh God, something that I lost. I mean, there was, I think Robert hinted at this, so I can say this. The first script of season 2 originally had a much longer opening of basically, in the other reality, you know, in that bad reality, where basically it was a rescue mission to save some of the other heroes, some of the other Guardians, basically,
like Rex.
From Omni-Man, from Omni-Man and Mark at that point. So it was a much longer scene. It was a different kind of opening, and we sort of, you know, Rob and I talked about it, and I think probably if we had come out very close to season 1, like a regular cadence, like maybe a year later, it would have worked. But we were sort of talking about it, and we're like, oh, man, it's kind of a downer opening, and a long downer opening, to come back after so long. I think people would be like, wait, what is this? This, like, how long are we in this other reality? So I think it was feeling like a mistake. So we trimmed it way back. But there was some really cool stuff in there, like so I thought some really great action and some stuff like this. So you're really sad when you cut that stuff. Sometimes you try to reuse it somewhere else if it works, but like, we lost some cool, fun stuff with the Immortal there. There was a different scene of the Immortal being used as bait to kind of lure in like Engstrom and like Eve and a robot and stuff that we lost. But ultimately, it was the right decision. This is better. This works better for what we were doing.
Are those things that you're talking about, the Immortal stuff, things like that we might be able to see later down the line in like a deleted scene type of thing?
Or does it not even get to that?
You know what? Unless we publish the scripts, and then also we would also have to publish like the scripts we didn't entirely use. No, so the difference is like, when you work live action, you shoot a lot of extra footage, right? You shoot a lot of B-roll. You shoot like if you have characters walking down a hallway, to a big fight, you shoot them walking down the entire hallway because film is cheap. Not that anyone shoots on film anymore. Digital is cheap. Yeah. So you just shoot it. You're already there. You already set up. It's already lit. A couple like 20 extra seconds of them walking is fine. You might need it, so you have it. And with animation, you edit before you shoot, basically. Mm-hmm. So we only really animate what we use. You try to figure out, you make these animatics, which is the whole thing cut together of storyboards with sound and everything. And you try and figure out what you're going to need because it costs money to animate and you don't want to pay money for stuff you're not going to use. Yeah. So we do make small edits, we trim, but if we did like deleted scenes, honestly, they would be like the starts of scenes and like the ends of scenes. It'd be like someone like getting up out of a chair or something. It would be the most.
I'd love to see it.
It would be boring. It would be terrible.
Let's see it.
We almost never. I don't even think we've ever cut like an entire scene that was animated. It's more like these little moments or something comes back that we're like, that doesn't look as good as we were hoping. So let's just start the scene later.
Interesting.
Features do that more so than TV. We just don't have the time, or
I'm sure that adds a bit of pressure to you guys in the writing room as well. That knowing that like you have to kind of lock in the story and what you're going to animate first, because then much later in the process, where if you were shooting on film or shooting live action, that you'd have that kind of liberty to like cut things or maybe do a quick reshoot in some way, whereas you guys don't necessarily have that option. I'm sure that kind of adds an extra level of stress as you're doing the writing of it.
Yeah, at every stage, at the writing, then also at the animatics. We try to make the animatics like really like you should be able to watch it and be like, that's the episode. You can watch it. Yeah. It's cut to time. It's got all the acting and the voices in it. We put in temp music and temp sound effects, so you can watch and be like, yeah, it's great. Let's just animate that. And then even then though, you're still sometimes making changes. We do reanimate sections sometimes because they didn't come back. They didn't work out the way we were hoping they would. So we will make changes and reanimate stuff. But honestly, it's like, this is television production, like Pixar takes 7 years to do 90 minutes of feature, right? We do, 8 hours in, I'm not going to be long at this time, but in like a year and a half, a year or whatever. So you got to move fast on this. You don't have time to sort of explore the scene and try it a couple different ways. Like you can do that, but that has to be done at the board stage, not at the animation stage.
Man. This whole interview was just reminding you of how hard your job is. Like, it's like, hey, don't forget, it's super hard.
Wyatt earlier alluded to just the insane success of the show. It was just like released that, season 1, episode 1 from season 2, episode 1, it like tripled its viewership, which is insane. I don't know if you have this answer, if you could tell us, but like in terms of Prime Video original series, where does Invincible rank on that? Because maybe we're too close, but it feels like it's got to be like top 5, right?
I mean, they don't tell me. I felt bad for a while. I was like, are they just treating, me differently or whatever? And then there was an interview with Tony Gilroy, who does Andor, which is, phenomenal. Right? And Tony Gilroy also like the Bourne movies, like just a insanely talented, huge writer and showrunner. And he was like, I have no idea how many people watch Andor. They won't tell me. So I was like, I don't feel so bad now. We know Amazon is really happy with it. I think we're number 1 in the US or right now on their platform. That's public. Like you can see that on the platform. Yeah. That's the information I get. I don't actually, they're just like, thumbs up, you get another season. Which is, I would love to know specifics. I do not. I'm not even like lying. I really do not know how many viewers we have or where we rank, other than they seem happy and we seem to have a much bigger audience than anyone expected.
Yeah, it's based off of how many gift baskets you get sent to you, right? That's like from Amazon. Like this one's got some muffins in it.
Yeah.
Must be good.
They've sent one or two. They're good. They're like, celebration season came out. We're happy. Here's a bottle of
Nice.
champagne. So that's nice. Yeah.
All right. We gotta wrap it up here in just a few minutes. So I want to just get some, if we could just do a couple of like quick lightning round type things.
Sure.
Real quick. Okay, so Alan episode. Incredible. It's the best episode in my opinion from
God.
seasons 1 and 2. Episode 3 of season 2 is incredible. It's just perfect. It's episode, someone brought this up online. I thought it was really interesting. It's episode 3 of season 2.
Episode 2 of
episode 3 of season 2.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Issue 23 is Alan's first appearance, or is this mess of this mess
Right.
of this mess. Is that intentional?
I wish I could say yes.
That's
You should
crazy,
just-
man.
Let's
Let's
say it
edit
was.
this out and say that it was going forward.
Absolutely,
Because
we planned that from the
Oh,
start.
man.
From day
Genius.
one.
Genius.
Day one.
That's a great
No,
headline.
his job's not hard enough. He needs to make the fucking
Yeah.
episodes and
Oh my God, that's the first I've actually heard about it.
Yeah.
I wish we could take credit for that. Maybe Robert had. Let's give it to Robert. He had
Okay, yeah, all right.
all along. He should tell us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Does having Universa in the Adam Eve game mean that she wouldn't appear in the show, or vice versa? Like, is that something that is a factor in the show?
I don't know specifically about her. I don't think so. I don't think that would be a reason. I mean, Robert and Skybound, they have different license agreements for different characters.
For
in
different
ways.
things.
You guys know all this stuff. Sony and Marvel and Spider-Man, they have all the same things. So it's not dissimilar here. So
Mhm.
really, we just sit down with the season, and Robert lets us know basically who we can and can't use, and if there's
Yep.
anybody we can't use, then we write around it, or we make a replacement, or we do something like that. So I don't know anything specific for Universa though. But I haven't heard anything like nobody's told us we can't use her. So
If you had to pick a favorite needle drop from season 1 or even the first half of season 2, do you have one?
I mean, I gotta say, holy fuck, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That's the one I had in my head from like when I was writing
Really?
that script. Yeah, well, I'm friends with the band. I've known those guys
Oh,
for
that's
years.
cool.
And I
Nice.
was like, it's not even a nepotism thing. I was just remember being like, oh, I know who would sound great, because I wanted some music that sounded a little alien, a little
Oh,
weird,
so
kind of,
good.
but like also
Mhm.
would get you going. And
Yeah.
I was like, I bet one of their songs would work great here. And I went through their catalog, and I was like, this one would work great, would work really well here. And the crazy thing is, when we were hiring music supervisors for the show, we had our music supervisor at the time. Sometimes they provide you a reel, or a sample. They're like,
Yeah.
here's songs I think kind of fit your vibe for the show. They were on her application to the show.
Oh, perfect.
And I was like, done, hired.
Yeah.
Obviously, so yeah, I was like, she's on the right track, obviously, because she already also sees that they were. So I'm like, so it's not just me wanting my friends on the show. Like this is legit here. So yeah, probably holy fuck.
That's
I'm
great.
sure if any of us ran a show, we'd all just be putting our friends on the show. So you're better than we are,
Well, here's the thing: you got to be careful, because that is, I think, that can be a common thing. Is you're just like, I'm just going to put all the music I like into the show.
Sure. Yeah.
Unless the show is about you, that is the wrong choice. It needs to be the right music for the show. I love REM. I grew up listening to REM my entire life. They're my favorite band. I've seen them the most, probably out of all times. Are they the right band for Invincible? Not yet, and I don't think maybe they ever will be, and that's fine. So we don't put them in the show.
Well, we had Kirkman on the show at the end of season 1, and he talked about that, where the final scene of the first episode, he talked about how they went through all these different songs and kind of tested out different ones, but in the end they kind of decided just to not have any music at all. I'm sure there's a lot of decisions that get made, millions of decisions every day. That has to be the best one. It was so
well,
perfect.
Here's the thing: you guys should. So we started talking about that early on. So part of that is like very early on, we were like, okay, we have this final scene. On one hand, if the sound design works, it will be very visceral to just hear that. To hear the meatiness of the fight, to hear the destruction of that, to hear all the bones, to hear all that kind of stuff. But as a showrunner, you like on our schedule, you also hedge your bets. Because you're like, okay, but what if that doesn't work? What if those sounds don't really sell the scene? What if they're not visceral enough? And this isn't a thing about our sound team. It's just like, maybe it just doesn't work. So what's your backup if it doesn't work? Because that's a long scene to run dry, if that idea of it doesn't work. So that idea was around from the very, very beginning. So we're like, also, let's have a backup. The backup is you put a song over it or you put music over it. You get your composer to do something over it. So we looked at both of those options. We looked at songs, and we had a couple songs that I think worked really, really well over that scene. But then we had both options. We could A/B it. We could look at them and be like, you know what? The sound design is awesome. It really sells the moment with just, and there's, if you listen really closely, there's just like the hum of like the air conditioning also in that scene that you hear at the very end, which keeps it alive and makes it feel like a real place. And we're like, no, this clearly this idea that we had again from the start is the way to go. This works really well. The songs were great, but this is the moment. Let's do it. It's much more jarring. It's much more abrasive. It's rare that you hear moments of silence on television. Let's use that. So that's how that came about. But you gotta, maybe it wouldn't work. Maybe we wouldn't need that song. We would have needed John Paisano to do some composition over. You don't know. So you want to be ready for all eventualities, because when it comes down to it, you might only have like a week to make that decision and have to solve it, because then the episode has to be mixed. So
Well, it was
tonally too. I mean, I don't know if Robert told us, you know, what it was off air, on air, but I think it was the right decision tonally wise too, because it could have changed from it being like terrifying and intense to almost kind of like lighter, you know. And man, the minute you hear War Woman's hammer, you're like, this needs to be quiet the whole time.
Her mace, the
oh my god,
I was so happy.
Oh my god,
that was the thing. We're like, oh, this is working now. But if you notice, we do it in other places, like episode 7 of season 1. There's no theme music over the credits. We just go straight out. So these are just like creative choices that you make on the way. And it was just like watching it and being like, you know what? I think it'd be great if we just go out silent after that, because it's such to really emphasize that ending and make it sort of stay with you instead of having this theme song kind of come in like loud. So these are again creative decisions. You A/B them. You try, you listen, you watch it both ways, and you kind of hopefully make the right call, or the call that you think is correct for the moment.
You guys are crushing it.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much, of course, not only for coming on the show, but thank you as well to the whole team. We couldn't be happier. I was just talking to someone recently online about how lucky we are as a fan base to have such a great adaptation, something that we're proud of and is doing well. So keep killing it.
Well, thank you guys, and thank you for the support of the show. I mean, like, you know, if we didn't have an audience, we didn't have people like you who enjoy it and watch it and talk about it, we wouldn't get to make more seasons. And that's really just that's my job. I just want to make more shows and make more seasons of Invincible. So you guys make that possible too. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Anytime.
Absolutely.
Great, thanks.
Okay, I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Professional.
Hello.
Hey.
Professional.
Hey guys, wow, there's a bunch of you. How's it
There
going?
is.